What's going on, Isaiah? Thanks for doing this episode with me today. So everybody, we got Isaiah here. He's a kinesiology graduate, and he is a strength and conditioning coach from Mind to Muscle in Barrie and Varsity Training Center in Brampton. So really nice to have you on here today. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it, man.
Having me, Evan.
Yeah, for sure. So I met Isaiah actually in university. We went to school together, and he went on to finish his degree program. So I guess the first question that I wanted to ask, we're going to be talking about, like I said, you're a strength and conditioning coach. So we're going to be talking a lot about fitness and fundamental things that are going on, like the fitness industry, fitness in our culture, and just, fundamental like tips for people that are looking to get into fitness or who have been involved in it or are looking to get better, just overall. So I guess the first thing that I want to ask is, I want to talk about academia a little bit, given that I met you in university and we had a shared experience there. So what do you think about like health and wellness through your experience in academia in like a university setting?
So in our stream, which was kinesiology, it was very exercise science focused. So there were courses where we kind of guided towards promoting health and wellness, because we also got a diploma in that. From Humber College, but I think they did a pretty brutal job at teaching people how to actually be healthy. I feel like if you're trying to teach someone to be healthy, you got to be healthy yourself, kind of lead by example. And we saw that through the last couple of years with who's telling us what to do about our health through the news. I think Canada's health minister looks like a zombie. So if you're looking kind of dead and you're trying to teach people how to be a little bit more lively, it could be questionable of what you're saying. I know Evan remembers certain professors we had that weren't the image of health that our other students and ourselves thought of. In terms of the material, I think academia does a good job at generalizing and kind of putting compartments in science. So instead of looking at the body, for example, as a whole, they're looking at it we have a doctor for the heart, we have a doctor for the liver, we have a doctor for feet, we have a doctor for shoulder injuries, but there's very few people that actually look at the body as a whole. Like, how does your shoulder injury affect how your liver is detoxifying? And I think that lacking in academia, and especially in that undergrad education, as how does this stuff connect to other areas of your life? How does maybe tension in the home affect the child's development in their sport, for example? So little things like that, I think they missed out on, and I don't think they're little, I think they're pretty big. And then another component in terms of my field, I communicate with people all day, every day as a coach, and I think that's the majority of my job. Yes, I have this science background, but it's a lot of these people come to me for training and to learn how to train, but they stay with me for the company. We're going to squat, we're going to hinge, we're going to do all those movement patterns that I learned in school my first year, and we're going to work all the muscles that I memorized my first year. But ultimately, how can I converse with this person and relate to this person so that they stay with me, put food on my table, but also I benefit their life by being a part of their life? And that's something that the school missed in terms of developing. People call it the soft skills, but they're ultimately the most important skills that you need, and that's just communicating and being a person.
Right, relational skills with other people. That reminds me of a quote from Robin Sharma, and it's kind of obvious, but he says, people don't do business with businesses, they do business with people. And that's something that a lot of, in the hustle and bustle of today's world, even in any industry, that a lot of businesses are losing sight of, and it really compromises like customer service and quality assurance. And it's, people are just kind of assigned like this number, and it's like, you're not a person, you're a number, and we're going to put you through our system. And that kind of reminds me of what it felt like to be in that kinesiology program too. And yeah, it's is really a shame. I think the pendulum tends to overswing, and then it kind of comes back to the other side with a little bit more balance. So it's, like you're an individual yourself who's recognizes the value in developing those good relationships with people. And, especially if they're going to be receiving coaching from you, they need to be able to trust you. They need to be able to feel a connection with you on a human level, not just on, this is what I learned in the book. And to branch off of that, that goes hand in hand with what you were talking about learning from somebody who is like a not really a picture of health. And that reminds me of something that David Goggins says, where he says there's too many theorizers and not enough practitioners. He's like, if you want the best advice in any given field or any given situation, you got to learn and listen to somebody who's actually a practitioner. So it felt like a lot of the time people were kind of just regurgitating stuff out of the book. I don't know if that was your experience in the last 2 years. I did for anybody watching, I did the first 2 years of the program, and then I opted out. It's a 4-year program, so he ended up doing the last 2 also. So I don't know if you mentioned, especially in the end, so did that kind of that trend kind of get even more evident where you were learning about health from people who weren't necessarily the best health practitioners?
Yeah. So in terms of, so let's clarify, so practitioner, your root word there's practice.
Right.
Practicing, you should be able to teach it. So when you're studying, this goes to any field. If you're studying for something, the best way to learn it and know your information is to be able to present it and teach it. Right? If I can talk about something, it means I understand it and know it. But if I can memorize something, it doesn't mean I understand it and know it. It's just me memorizing it. And people have this sense of, I memorized it, so now I know it. But in 10 years, when you need to apply that knowledge, you can't, because it's not true knowledge. It's just what you memorized.
And then chances are you're going to forget what you memorized anyway, which is
exactly. It's eventually just going to pass. It's going to fall out your ears.
That's my biggest criticism on the education system as a whole, is that's we have these testing methods that are centered around that concept of memorization and regurgitation rather than practical learning and being able to embody what it is that you're supposedly learning, right? A lot of learning isn't actually learning because, like you said, it just goes in one ear, maybe stays in there for a little bit, and then you write the test and it goes out the other ear.
That's one of the things that it's kind of unfortunate. We understand the school was closed and we did a lot of online stuff. So exams were online. It was almost, I think the profs understood this, and some of them gave open book tests. And then it was more here, you can basically use your notes, but if you don't understand it, you're not going to understand the question I'm asking. So you're still going to get it wrong. But if you understand the information, you're going to be able to apply just that easy information I gave you that you have access to during your exam. So I think that whole memorization kind of slowly drifted away as we went through because it was less sciencey and kind of more practical. But the practical aspects I feel should be applied throughout, because I think when you'll see people have the upper hand getting a career after when they've had experience in the field. So I got my first coaching job in 2018. I got into university when I was in 2018. If I didn't like coaching and I quit, no big deal. I've already experienced it, right? And I'm still in university trying to get my degree at that point. So me going in early, I was able to, okay, I'm learning information and I can go apply it right away. That night after my class, I can go apply something, right, that I learned. No one cares about the science, but I know that I'm applying it. The
right.
Client that I'm working with didn't know, but I know I'm applying it, right? So little things like that, I feel like a lot of students miss, and that's on them. That's not on the prof. I think the prof should kind of push it a little bit, kind of influence it. Hey, here's the opportunities we have. Hey, we have opportunities in our fitness facility where kinesiology students can come work under a 4th year student that's doing their personal training practical or whatever, right? Even just shadowing stuff. One thing the school did good was providing us with like 1-year internships type stuff. It was unpaid, so but that's just the field. Like it's very hard to find an internship or a graduate assistant job that's paid. So it could be tough for some students, but they allowed me to get into like the rehab setting. So even though I'm not physically in the rehab setting for my work, I was able to do a bunch of hours in a rehab setting and just get exposed to a different population, which again, go back to communication. You're just communicating with more people. Everyone's different. You get to adjust and critique yourself on how you're communicating with these people, right? So you're learning how to basically expand your toolbox on, am I able to talk to someone who's maybe from a different generation with an ailment, or am I not able to do that because I don't know how to be concise and clear, right? So little things like that too. But that was learned on my own. I didn't learn it at school. I learned it because I put myself into that internship. They just said, we have this program. And then I said, okay, I'm going to go do it. So you get a call to action, you got to take action type thing. And then let's see, we were talking about how that whole memorization. So going back to that, you get all this information in your first years. Like Evan, you know that it was like just a pile of information we got. We didn't actually.
It wasn't a lot of practical stuff. We weren't in.
Yeah, it was just like, here's a bunch of science.
Second year, we were in the gym a little bit. There was a couple classes where, we learned hands-on, and that was good. But first year, for the most part, it wasn't.
And then we were exposed to one prof that kind of brought into the spiritual side of stuff. And and there was also one class that it's called stress management. We meditated every single time we were in class.
Yeah, that was a practicum. I remember I didn't take that one, but you took that one, and
but that one was a 0 credit. So it's a very optional thing, because like you honestly will pass no matter what. I don't think profs are looking for you to fail in those ones, or instructors aren't looking to fail you in that. But that's something like, why isn't that mandatory?
Yeah, stress management seems like it's
everyone deals with stress.
Yeah, even mandatory, let alone like in a specialized degree program in university. That should be like a grade 9, 10 course, if you ask me. Like
exactly. So right? This way, after my session. So today our gym was open 9 a.m. to 3:30. So I never had anyone late night. But during the week, sometimes I have 13, 14, 15-year-olds, 8:30 to 9:30 session. I get them really, really wired. They go squat heavy. They go deadlift heavy. Their nervous system's all fired up.
They're supposed to go to bed.
And they got to wake up in the morning at 6:30 to go to school. They got to be in bed by 10:30 if they want 8 hours, because Isaiah told them that they should be getting 8 hours so they can recover and keep it. So if I want them to get to bed in an hour, but they're wired and they just did workout, and I was yelling at them, not bad motivationally, and then music's bumping, everything's loud, there's lights going on because we keep our lights on, obviously. So all this stimulus right before bed, you think they're going to fall asleep? Nope. They're going to end up going to bed at 1 a.m. So how do I change that? At 9:25, I turn off half the lights. It's not completely dark. Turn off half the lights, turn off the music, get everyone lying down. They go put their feet up on a box or a bench. They lie on the ground. They take 5 minutes of belly breathing, just box breathing, 4 in.
Head start, the rest and digest process.
Yep. So now I took them from sympathetic, parasympathetic, and now they go home and they can actually fall asleep.
Right. And for anybody who doesn't know, just to give a little lesson on the jargon, because that's always like a gateway to entry. I find parasympathetic is like, your system where you're, for not to overcomplicate anything, where you're cooling down, where you're taking it easy, you're relaxing, rest and digest. Sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight.
Yeah. So running from the tiger that no one ever has anymore.
That nobody ever has to run from anymore.
Stuff that fires up that fight or flight light. So that's why you wake up in the morning. Right? It releases a hormone called cortisol, which is your stress hormone. If that gets released, your body is now alert because now you're awake. That's why people are awake during the day, because light causes that. And then
sun goes away, melatonin.
It's like caffeine, food, sugar. that stuff is also going to kickstart energy, like bring your energy up, stimulate you, get your sympathetic nervous system going. While parasympathetic is when you're like winding down and you need to fall asleep. That's why when it's dark outside, you tend to want to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Right. So me, by doing that wasn't learned in school. Well, I guess I learned some of the breathing mechanisms in that non-credit course, but why wasn't that taught when I was doing my exercise prescription?
Yeah. That class.
Right, because that's part of my exercise prescription. I prescribe exercises to athletes. That's an exercise. It just happens to be at the end of the workout.
Especially when it's like a later exercise, that's something that should really be considered. Like the fact that, and like good on you for considering that and implementing it as part of your exercise prescription. Because yeah, like you said, a lot of these kids, you know, they're in school all day. If you're training young athletes, which you do quite a bit, and you know, they got to have either, you know, they get home, they eat dinner, they digest a little bit. They're having like a 6, a 7, or an 8 o'clock strength and conditioning class. So that's really important because it's kind of conflicting with their schedule, right? They're going to be wired. Like me personally, and I guess this is a little question that I think I could ask you too. Me personally, I work out in the mornings. Right when I wake up, I have my cold shower. I down a big like liter of water, and then I refill it and bring it with me to my gym, and I work out. I've also heard, though, this is a little off topic. I'm just curious, though. I've heard that it's not great to have your heavy days, like your heavy lifting days, right when you wake up, because your body's still, you know, I make sure I warm up and everything, but even just akin to the fact that you were asleep like an hour ago, your body still hasn't been moving around for a couple hours. It's not really warmed up. So it's like, I think I heard this on like a Rogan podcast. So I haven't been keeping up with my like exercise science, but I'm just curious if you have anything to say about that.
It depends. Everything in science is it depends.
Textually.
So you're about 2 hours before you wake up. So say you're consistent, you go to bed at 10, wake up at 6, just easy. Okay. You go to bed at 10, wake up at 6, you get your 8 hours. At 4 a.m., your body temperature is the lowest. Right? The point of warming up is to increase body temperature.
According to like a traditional circadian rhythm, then 10 to 6.
Yeah. So your body warms up when you want to wake up. So now your body temperature is coming up, cortisol is now releasing, and then you slowly wake up at 6 a.m. That's if you don't wake up with like an alarm. If you wake up with an alarm, which I do because I wake up at early times and it's nighttime still when I wake up. So like, so there's no way the sun's waking me up. You might get into a fight or flight, but you'll also come down from that. Like, you're not going to be like, oh my God, the alarm scared me. But like, you are like brought out of a sleep quickly. Yeah. And if you always wake up, and people will use an alarm to wake up at the same time, and then eventually you'll find out like, oh, I tried to sleep in and I couldn't. It's because now your body's just adjusted to it.
Yeah.
Say you woke up at 6 a.m. Now your body's a little bit warmer. The whole idea of why it might not be good is your nervous system's not like fired up. You haven't got any stress yet. So your cortisol hasn't peaked, right? It's just elevating.
Peaked in a healthy way, not like I just.
Yeah, peaked at a healthy way, right? And then if you also think about it this way, are you eating before you work out? No. So you've been fasting. Say you ate dinner at 6 p.m. You've been fasting now for 12 hours. So now you're fasted state, and so you're not in a fed state, and you're going to go lift heavy. You probably don't have the same energy levels. So that's probably why they said that. I personally lift heavy at 4 a.m. It's perfectly fine. I've heard personal records at 4 a.m. It's perfectly fine. You just gotta get used to it. Make sure you warm up. And those morning sessions, you just might have to do, instead of a 5-minute warm up, you're doing a 10, 15.
Yeah. Just
right.
Play the nervous system a little bit.
Yeah. So that's where, when we talk about resistance training later, how we integrate light power circuits, how you integrate isometrics, how you integrate like dynamic warm-ups, and not just like stretch my hamstring, touch my toe.
Let's talk about those 3 things: light power, isometric, and dynamic warm-ups. Now, those are 3. Like, I know personally that those are 3 really powerful concepts in any like strength training. But I feel as though with 90% of people that do resistance training, and
So
just like a random number, they're not really doing that. So why don't you just like tell everybody what those 3 principles are?
I'm going to drop some names of strength coaches. Personally, I always wanted to go into like a college setting, like in the States, like Division I type school where you're working with a lot of teams and athletes. But I'm slowly getting geared away from that into the private setting, which I'm in now, just because of the imbalance in the setting in terms of you're going to work 80 hours a week and not get paid for 80 hours. You're going to miss out on your family a lot. You're going to have to give a lot of time to athletes that might not want to be there. It's getting better, but
like colleges in the States type of thing.
Like college setting. So it's getting better. They're getting better compensation and stuff. And like schools are now saying like, yeah, have a work-life balance. But I'm just putting that out there that yes, I love the college setting, but now I'm getting geared away more to the private sector in terms of I kind of want to grow in the private setting where I still work with athletes, but they come to me.
Right.
I'm not just in the school and they have to come to me.
Right.
So Zach Dakin, TCU, Texas Christian University in Texas, in the States. D1 baseball, one of the top baseball programs in the country / North America, if you want to count Canadian universities. He does it better than anyone in terms of dynamic warm-ups. He has pitchers hitting 23 miles per hour on their sprints simply because he knows how to train like from the bottom up. Pitchers don't run. They're throwers. Yeah.
Like in their sport.
Yeah, like in the sport, like they don't run. Pitchers don't run.
Right.
So people didn't train them to run. But if we look at biomechanics, when you throw something, if you watch Tom Brady, if you watch, I don't even know, Clayton Kershaw, he's a good one. Clayton Kershaw is a long guy. So you'll see his arm go back. He whips it through. His hip is where his power comes from. What do you use when you run? Your hip. So if I can get a really, 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 really high stimulus from a sprint on their hip extensors and their hamstrings and their quads in terms of extension and creating power really, really fast, why am I not going to do that? It will translate to throwing.
Right.
Right? Because they have to throw fast. Like if you're throwing 100-mile-an-hour fastballs and you need to throw 40 of those in a night, you better be prepared to repeat power, right? So how he does it in terms of his warm-ups. So here's one spectrum, very structured. Again, college setting, players have to go there. He creates buy-in by making them better. He shows them results, right? He doesn't need to worry about making it fun. He does make it fun, but he doesn't have to worry about making it fun. He needs to make them better. Once they see results, those guys' eyes light up, they're bought in. Now they're going to stick with you. They're going to do what you tell them to do, and hopefully they go pro from there, right? So he'll go through like skip series where now it's locomotion. Locomotion is just movement across the floor, right? Some hops. So rudiment hops are like little pogo hops through your ankles. And then you can go like more knee jumping. So you're jumping, but now you're using your knees more. And then your max jumps are going to be knee, hip, ankle. Everything's moving.
This is still just as a warm-up.
Yeah, so he'll do like a build up to this, and then he'll build up sprints, and he'll do top speed work. We're not going to get into that. Top speed work is just going to be like you see track athletes do A skips, B skips. If you don't know what that is, Google it. Atlas is a good place to find all those exercises. And then he'll get them. This is one thing that is often overlooked. How do I get their head in it? How do I make guys click in, right? So if you see, now this is a different sport, hockey. You'll see a goalie throwing lacrosse balls on the wall or tennis balls, and he's catching them. He's not training his hand-eye. His hand-eye is not going to get better before the game. What he's doing is, can I focus on one thing? I see guys taping their sticks. I see reporters over there. Can I focus on me throwing this ball off the wall and catching that ball? Because on the ice, I'm going to have to focus on catching the puck. Right? So he's trying to get his mind into the game. That's an easy position to now make that an example. Okay? How can I make an athlete get dialed in now to lift weights or sprint or whatever my session's going to entail.
Right.
This is what he uses: a tennis ball. A guy gets a tennis ball and you do all your locomotion. You just throw the tennis ball and watch it and catch it. Throw the tennis ball, watch it, catch it. So all he has his guys do are, if they're doing, say, a lateral shuffle, they're shuffling down the floor, they're tossing the ball way up. They got to catch it, but they got to keep moving. So now you're multitasking. When you multitask, your brain works. You can't be out of it if you need to catch this ball. Right. If you drop the ball, what were you paying attention to?
It's hard enough focusing on one thing, let alone two. So you're dialing in your brain power.
Exactly. So now you're dialed in, and that's how he gets his guys now. Now their head's in it, their body temperature's up, and then maybe he goes through mobility. We don't usually see that often on like the Instagram and social media. He definitely goes through some mobility series. Position-wise, he changes it up. Like pitchers or throwers are going to do more than like outfielders in terms of like shoulder rehab and prehab, like movement of the shoulder joint and kind of giving it extra love. So there's one guy with warm-ups, like dynamic warm-ups. Like you can simply walk into a public gym, take a tennis ball. If they have turf space or track space, do some skips, bounce around a little bit. Do some skips, do some lateral shuffles, do some crossovers, do some light jogs into some faster sprints. Like that's probably one of the best ways to get your nervous system prepped. And then go into your motion is lotion type exercises where now you're going into deep ranges of motion, where you're going into like a really deep squat where your hamstrings are touching your calves. So full knee bend, knee going over your toe. And then you can even go into like upper body rotation stuff, right? And all that 10 minutes before your workout. Instead of just walking over to the bench press on Monday and just hammering out 9 sets of bench press because you had to warm up before you could bench 135, right? You could easily just do 10 minutes of work and then jump into your lift and take one warm-up set just to get the movement in. Right? And then after your dynamic warm-up, that might be now light power. Now, oftentimes, here's a picture of our wall, that padded wall. We throw medicine balls off that. Most gyms don't have that. If you work out in a garage, you probably don't have a wall you can throw on because most houses don't have like a flat brick wall.
Right.
So you get a plate instead. Fake throw. Don't let go of it. 5 pounds, just throw.
That changes the stimulus a little bit, but I mean, it still follows.
Yeah. So it's now decelerating, so you're getting fast at stopping, which is funny.
Good thing.
But it's like you still creating some force fast, right? Any power is just fast force. So jump. I don't know why people stop jumping and then try to go play rec basketball every Saturday when they're 45 and haven't jumped since they were 20.
That's how you blow your tendon.
Yeah, that's how you get injured. So jump. Don't stop jumping. Doesn't have to be, you don't have to have a 40-inch vertical when you're 40. Just jump. You can even just like randomly hop. Like hop around your house if you don't want to do it at the gym. Like you don't have to box jump if you're afraid of missing the box. Just jump as high as you can and land.
Yep. That's something, there's like you hear, I mean, like we're still young guys, so I guess we're not like practitioners in this area yet, but you hear people that are older talking about like, oh, you'll see when you get to my age. And I'm always so skeptical. I'm like, I'm sure, like naturally you lose your athletic abilities, a little bit of power, like you said, that's actually the first thing to go, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah. So, but it's like, how much have you been aiming to prevent the loss of those things? Like, I don't see you in the gym. I don't see you, like, it's like, oh, you'll see when you get to my age. It's like, when's the last time you actually had a workout, like a proper workout, So sure, naturally it does happen, but you can decrease the margin of those losses tenfold if you keep training, right? You keep like you did when you were a kid.
So, for example, I have a client I've been working with for 2 years now, and she's 24. So she was a dancer when she was younger, like in high school, but she's been out of high school for 8 years, more than that, 9 years, because she did a full year of work already after undergrad. So she hasn't done any explosive movements when she walked into the gym with me. She was doing like pretend hit. Like if you go to Orange Theory, you're not doing hit, or else you wouldn't be able to do it for an hour. So she was doing that stuff, and she started strength training with me, and immediately I introduced some light hops. She did a dynamic warm-up. The dynamic warm-up was enough for her power output, because skips were enough to give her some sort of stimulus for the power. Once I saw skips were getting more natural and easy, and she was feeling bouncier, like she could bounce off the ground more, I was like, all right, now we can move into actually jumping. So I put out small hurdles, 6-inch hurdles, jump over it, land, jump over it, land. She didn't want to jump over it at first because she thought she would hit the hurdle. I'm like, just jump as high as you can, use your arms, landed. Eventually her power got better. Okay, now we're going to add depth drop. So now you got to decelerate fast and then explode out of it. Got better at that. Okay, now we're going to do kettlebell swing. Now we're doing loaded power, or dumbbell jumps. Grab 2 10s, jump with weight. So now your body weight's not 150, it's 170 pounds, right? So slowly develop this power. Well, now all I need to do is touch on it. She doesn't need to be the most explosive human being ever.
Right.
She's not playing any sport. I don't need to increase her power. I just need to keep it. I just need to keep it so that if she needs to run up the stairs one day, she can run up the stairs.
Quick.
If she needs to pull herself up somewhere, she can pull herself up. Because if you think about it, most activities are power over strength. Well, power and strength, not so much like 10 reps.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
that's
people,
the first thing to come anyway, is that endurance, right? That's the first system that starts to build.
Yeah. Ultimately, I don't train endurance personally. I go on a run or go hiking or walk every day. If I were to run, I'd run once a month. It's so easy to get your steady state endurance. You literally can run today and then in 1 month, do the exact same run and feel the exact same as today.
Yeah. Yeah. That brings me to an interesting thought about people who run regularly as like a form of exercise. I know my own mother, she doesn't do any resistance training, but she's been running every day for I don't know how many years, wakes up 5 a.m., very dedicated. But she got all kinds of problems. She had an issue with her knee. She had plantar fasciitis for a while. I think she actually got surgery on her knee. So I want to touch on that a little bit for people who might be thinking running is, especially women, I think, are targeted by, their psyches tend to be targeted by this concept of losing weight through cardio. Right? And not just women, men fall into that too. But for the most part, the stereotypical thing for a man is to lift weights. So even if a man is
build muscle
and trying to lose fat, they're probably gonna gravitate towards lifting weights in the gym instead of going for a run. Whereas, I mean, the tides are shifting a little bit where you're seeing more women do resistance training, which is great because resistance training, we know that it actually targets fat loss, if not just as well as cardio, even better. But a lot of people don't recognize that. So I guess, firstly, do you agree with that statement there that resistance training would actually target fat loss better than jogging or going for runs regularly? And second, what do you think about that concept of running regularly? I'm under the impression that it's not the best practice for most people. Most people have, and for the reason being that most people have a little bit of imbalances in their ankle or in their knee. And when you're running, you're just pounding into those imbalances and making them even worse.
I go right into isometrics.
Okay, yeah. We'll segue from there into isometrics. So what do you think of that?
All together. So running, you get a lot of injuries. A lot of people get the plantar fasciitis or shin splints before knee pain. Knee pain will usually come from jumping.
Okay.
Say, so that basketball example I told you, the adult trying to go play basketball. If you go from nothing, no jumping, to now you're going to play an adult league 2 times a week and you jump a whole bunch and you think you can dunk. So you're in warm-ups, you're just trying to dunk.
Yeah.
You're not taking shots. You went from 0 jumps a week to 50 jumps a week. And that's a lot on your knee. Like you're going to get jumpers near your patella tendinopathy, which is just pain right through here. So you should have like, now you got to you got to prepare for this high intensive stimulus. Same thing with the ankle. You got to prepare for this repeated stimulus of hitting the ground. Well, how do I do that? First, I'm going to build strength, right? If you build big, robust joints, they're not going to get hurt.
How do you build big joints? I want to touch on that distinction of like
muscles around the joint. So like my shoulder, you don't see my joint, you see my muscle. Right. I'm saying like physically, like you see it. So like say my shoulder joint or my knee joint, like you don't see my knee joint, you see like the muscles around my knee joint. That's what creates its shape, right? So if I build big quads, nice strong hamstrings, my knee is going to be fairly safe. And like a good calf, my knee is going to be relatively safe, right? I'm not going to, most likely not going to get hurt from
well, there's an exception there to like
slow
a
movement.
bodybuilder would actually probably be in more trouble than your average person.
From a slow movement. So now there's a spectrum. You did your slow movement. Now you built strength. Now make that strength fast. And when you make that strength fast, now you're relating it to your 2 days rec league where you're jumping a lot.
Right. And you're injury prevention when you're doing some of that.
Yeah. So you went from 0 jumps, 0 strength training to now you're 50 jumps because you're still playing your rec league, but now you're adding strength work. So now those jumps don't feel as hard. They don't feel as impactful on your body. But now let's take those 50 jumps and let's create a threshold that my threshold isn't 50 jumps, but it's 100 jumps. So now my two days of rec league, 50 jumps, are nowhere near my threshold. So I'm not going to get hurt.
Threshold being this is like where you can get to before you're really feeling it or before you're getting hurt.
Yeah, before you get hurt, right? So as long as your threshold moves like this, your jumps can increase.
Right.
If they run parallel, you're good. You're never going to get hurt. Right? You're never going to have that tendon pain. So with running, if you do a great exercise is just like a plantar flexion. So basically a calf raise isometric. And you can do this a lot of ways. If people want to dive into it deeper, they can go Alex Nater, Nater. And he's an Australian coach, and he worked with a lot of rugby players. So running based sport where they actually run a lot in the game. And also track athletes. And one thing he noticed in his long distance athletes was if he incorporated lower leg isometrics, so knee down isometrics, like with your calf, basically ankle isometrics, either overcome
isometrics. What is that? Like ankle isometrics, what does that look like?
So like either like pulling the toe to your nose or like pushing the floor away.
Okay.
Like plantar flex or dorsiflex. So right. Pushing to the ground or up. And then he did it with different ways. A yielding is where you're just like holding, you're putting enough force to not let the weight bring you down. And then overcoming isometric is you're trying to move an immovable object.
Trying to push a brick wall.
Yeah, you're movable. So yeah, you would do that in like the rack or something, or into a human being.
Right.
Whatever.
Pins on the side of the rack.
Yeah. So stuff like that. So if you do those isometrics, you found like pain went down, you increase that threshold. Now your tolerance for impact has now increased. If my ceiling increases, I can move through it. No problem. I can do my runs. And that also goes towards like just general, like if you were to run, you're not going to go from a 0, never running to a 20-kilometer run.
Yeah.
You got to go in that
still at 2 kilometers.
Yeah, you gotta go in that linear progression. You gotta do 1 kilometer your first week once, and then next week add another kilometer throughout the week in volume. And then slowly you can like run every day and then run longer every day. And then slowly you're able to do it, right? So if people aren't basically skipping the progression, that's when they get hurt. If people are now accumulating too much and their tolerance doesn't increase, they're going to get hurt.
So a lot of runners that are getting hurt, it's probably because they're not doing any form of like resistance training. They're not
Yeah,
training.
they're not complementing it.
Right. That's a good word for that. Not complementing it. And the ones that aren't getting hurt, because there's like a bit of there's like two sides of people where, like, you get one side of people that talk about how running, you're pounding your joints, it's not good. And then another side of people that are like, there's 80-year-olds running marathons. What are you talking about?
So that's the whole concept with smoking too. I smoked all my life. I haven't died yet. I haven't got lung cancer.
Yeah. Well, but the difference is the 80-year-olds who are running marathons, they're probably complementing it with resistance training, or at least have throughout their life. Maybe they're not doing it anymore, but.
And
also,
then
I don't actually know for sure if there's 80-year-olds running marathons. If that's not a thing,
probably is.
It probably is. Like, I'm willing to bet it is. But like, that was just an example of there is an extreme where there's people that have been running for 30, 40 years and they're still doing marathons. They still have a meniscus. So
most of these people are not regular, not like you're the whole bell curve. Those people are on the ends of the bell curve.
So you would say your average person, it's not a good idea to like run every day?
Well, unless you're complementing it and you slowly progress to it, yeah, it's probably not a great idea.
And then at that point, if you're complementing it and slowly progressing it, like, that's how many hours of your day is that consuming? Like, you're probably only doing that if you're a professional athlete.
Exactly. So how much are you willing to commit to that in order to complement both? And then also, what is your goal? So that's also one question I ask as a coach. What's your goal? If the guy comes to me and says, I want to run a marathon, well, I got to make him run. Like, I can't not prescribe running. Like, he has to run a marathon. Like, that's his goal. I got to get him to be able to run 24 kilometers or whatever it is, miles, right?
I think it's a half marathon. I think it's a marathon 42
miles.
42 miles.
Yeah, 2 miles. So if he wants to run a marathon, I got to make sure he runs and can run that long. But he's also going to come in here and do some lifting.
Yeah.
Because if the muscles can't contract well, he's not going to be able to contract them repeatedly for a long period of time.
He's going to get to mile 16 and be done.
And then if he goes boozing every day, every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, he's also not going to be able to run the marathon because he doesn't recover after our workouts or the runs.
Would you say that is probably the biggest issue that your average weightlifter or your average, person who's into fitness, that's probably the biggest limiting factor? Like, especially, I mean, you train athletes. I don't know how many people you train from just like the general population, but what do you think? Do you think that element of recovery, because they say like fitness is 1/3 diet, 1/3 training, 1/3 like rest and recovery, and nutrition, I guess you can lump in with recovery.
Yeah.
Also, do you think that's accurate, like that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 thing? No? What do you think?
What's exercise? Is it a stress?
Yeah.
So if you're stressing out, you're not building any muscle. You're breaking down.
Right.
You're it's catabolic. So you're breaking down. If you want to build muscle, you have to have a higher anabolic to catabolic ratio, which means that nutrition, sleep, hydration,
anything that's going to serve the anabolic process, rather.
Yeah. So having a good relationship with your girlfriend, then you'll get some muscle. But if you're yelling at your girlfriend every single day and not able to fall asleep because you get in fights before bed,
you have bad relationships, you
lack hydration because you don't have enough sodium in your diet and you don't drink enough water, and then you eat McDonald's for breakfast, Tim Hortons for lunch, and then Wendy's for dinner, you're not going to build muscle. You actually probably feel worse and crash, right? So managing all those stressors is what's going to now improve stuff. So you'll see, and I heard this on a podcast recently, actually, you'll hear about college athletes, like they're young. People say, oh, metabolism's faster. No, your metabolism's not faster. Your cells probably just recover better, right? So they can go and like party for a whole semester and then come back in the off season and be ripped still. But like,
in that sense, that is
metabolic health,
right?
How's their health inside their body? right? Like, what about their health inside the body? So that's like, there's the whole thing, like, you got to balance everything in order to create longevity in anything.
So
You
those,
got to be able to balance it all. So if you're running and lifting, you got to balance that out so that when you get to work, you can still work. So that you don't bring work home and then have a bad relationship with your spouse. And that you can also come home to your kids and not have to bring work home and do extra work because you decided to run for 3 hours this morning. And now have to do that extra hour of work at night when your kid has a soccer game and you're supposed to go watch, right? So balancing all of that. And then people, when you find balance in that, that's when you start to see growth, right? In all aspects of your life.
right, not just in the gym, but like,
Yeah, not just like running more kilometers or getting bigger muscles.
it's like feeling like your life is of better quality overall.
Yeah, feeling more vital.
Yeah. So I guess in that sense, then, if you had to give it a number, like, it's not 1/3, it's less than 1/3 is what you're saying, is the actual.
Yeah, I would say training's probably like 1/5 of it, 1/6. Like, it's a very small portion.
And I guess what I want to make clear is, like, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not saying that training is 1/5 of like looking good. Like, that's not what you're, because training is probably more than 1/5 of like being big and like having a lot of muscle.
Yeah.
You're talking about more than just, having huge biceps. You're talking about like having a healthy inside and actually being able to
health
properly. Health. Yeah, overall health.
So if you want to, like, CrossFit's a good example. Those guys, like, guys and girls, kill themselves. They train like 4 hours a day.
Overtrain.
Yeah, they're basically in an overtrained state majority of the time right before competition.
Okay.
So like, actually a little bit before so more in the middle of their off season, then like they'll taper, so they'll like rest, recover, and then so they can peak up and be top performance at the competition.
Right. What's the distinction there? Instead of like cyclical, it's or instead of like long term, it's like cyclical. Like, it's like,
yeah. So they would go. So let's make it easy. If I were to like want to increase my, I'll give you a CrossFit thing. So power clean, if they need to increase their power clean, they're not going to just keep increasing weight of 1 rep max and work at their 1 rep max right up until competition, because now my nervous system just crushed and I might not hit my 1 rep max on competition date.
Right.
If I go like 3 months out, I do like my 4th week, I hit my max, and then I'll like recover back down and like just work at like working maxes. So like 5 reps, 3 reps, clusters, and like different concepts within strength training. They just go up and down so that they time it so that competition's up here this day, they'll hit it a new max at that day. So that's like the whole periodization type thing. So in terms of where were we? We were with overall health. So you're not doing that, right? We don't want to go like linear.
Right. That's like that's an MMA fighter or a CrossFit lifter.
Yeah, that's like you're looking at the extremes where they got to kill themselves. They got
competitions a year. You have 2 fights a year. Like,
yeah, they got to consume a bunch of calories. They just need to like. That's why you see guys eating Mars bars and Snickers and drinking a gallon of Gatorade every day. Like, that's not sustainable for a regular human being who needs to go to their 9 to 5 office job.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's not sustainable for an athlete really either. Like, that's the
no, athletes are probably some of the unhealthiest human beings. They look like they're really healthy, but like if you think about it, they're unhealthy. Even a team sport like hockey, you play at 7 p.m., you finish your game at 11 p.m., you get on a flight, you fly to the next city, you're in bed at 4 a.m., you wake up for practice at 9 a.m. And you do it all over again. You do that for 82 games, 8 months out of a year.
It's so interesting that even like, I don't know, it might have been you actually that reposted this. I saw on like my Instagram feed. I think it was like DK Metcalf. I'm not familiar with football, but I think he's a football player. Is that right?
Two-bag candy a
Two
day
bags
or something.
candy, yeah.
It's like, he probably doesn't eat that, first of all. Second of all,
do you think he was just messing around?
If he does eat candy, he's 260 pounds of pure muscle mass right now and probably like 8% body fat. the candy is literally just going into his muscle stores, and he's going and training for 4 hours and working that candy off. No one does that, so don't eat 2 bags of candy.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he's also like, he's an outlier. Maybe his basal metabolic rate, so his like what he burns from not moving all day and laying in bed, is like 4,000 calories because he has so much muscle mass. Right. So him eating 2 bags of candy is like such a small portion of that it might not affect them. I would be concerned about like
if that's regular practice,
blood glucose, because like, all right, you're probably going through these peaks and troughs of like high glucose, low glucose if you're doing that. So like, don't.
Insulin resistance coming in hot.
At the same, like he's making millions of dollars. So if he pays me to give him nutritional advice, I'd give him that advice, but it's purely just advice, right? It's an opinion.
You're not making.
You're not take it, right? He chooses to take
he likes that hyper-normal stimuli of candy. He's gonna keep doing it, even if it's best interest. Even just like the diet of like athletes after, I think I saw once, it might have been like the Maple Leafs or something, like a picture of one of the athletes posted of like the food after a game. They have this big table of like snacks, and it's just like,
yeah, it's brutal.
Low quality food. Like you can hardly even call it food. It's like hot dogs and stuff like that.
It's like processed food, and it's sad that athletes are getting that and they play professional sports or even NCAA, like they're on the brink of breaking professional. Like,
or even if they're in the big leagues already or in the NHL,
and like you're eating like, it's unfortunate, but you're eating like a 10-year-old. Like it's tough, and 10-year-olds shouldn't eat like that either.
But they happen to eat. But like I get what you're saying.
That the Western diet is like that. And as a coach, I think that the wrong people goes back to academia. The wrong people are making decisions on what goes on at the school. So you have finance advisors or whatever, like people who are choosing where the budget goes at the school, making decisions on what food our athletes get, which is incorrect. Like, you shouldn't have these people that know nothing about nutrition or performance making decisions on.
Yeah, because they're just considering the budget.
Yeah, they're just saying, oh, that's just cheaper. Yeah, but it's chicken fingers and fries for 4 out of 5 days of the week. So like, not ideal. And then it goes, okay, the strength coach wants to get like whole foods in. So, oh, that's too expensive. Yeah, what do you mean? Like, you want our kids to be better basketball players or football players or whatever sport they play and be healthy and be able to pass their exams, or do you want them to have brain fog and not perform in their sport and make the school money and bring better recruits in?
Yeah, that's interesting that you make that point, actually, because it literally shows that like it would serve the school even financially to provide like better resources for their athletes, for example, or, for just the students in general. And it's the same thing in like business, where it serves a business to actually treat its employees fairly and perhaps give them better pay, even if like in the short term, sure, you're taking a little bit more out of your budget, but in the long term, you're making a better name for yourself. You're going to make more revenue as a company. Your employees are going to be happier. They're going to do better work.
They're going to do better work. They're going to be more effective as employees.
Exactly.
They're not going to be like, I don't get paid enough for this, I'm not going to do it. Or I'll leave this for another day or someone else because I don't want to stay overtime because I don't get paid for it. Or,
they're gonna feel valued, and that's the number one like complaint, I think. If my statistics are right here, one of the most common complaints amongst employees is that they don't feel valued in the workplace, and I don't know if that's according to the factor of like not being able to put in their 2 cents to the magnitude that they want to and make as much of a difference as they want to. I'm sure it's a bit of that, but I'm sure it's also referencing the fact that they feel that they're not being compensated fairly. If I had to guess, I would say, that's what's at the forefront of most people's minds, right? Is their bottom line. So unfortunately, we go about it the wrong way a lot of times. We have this like reductionist approach, and this, I actually want to loop back to a point that we made earlier with this. So a reductionist approach in terms of like, let's break it down to all these different sectors and analyze them individually. And then, okay, so we're looking at the finances now. Okay, so how can we cut costs here? Not recognizing that if you actually spend a little more here, it's going to pay you dividends in the long run. That's the same thing with like our government, for example. It's such like a talking point to criticize a government that spends too much money on like public services. But that actually is in the best interest of the country, of the people, because it's kind of circle back around when you have a population that's like more well educated. For example, if you're spending more taxpayer money into public education, that's going to serve your country in the long run. That's like the most important resource that we have, is like the youth, right? They're going to shape the future. And this comes back to the reductionist approach that we see all over our culture and in academia specifically. I'm thinking of, like, we have doctors that aren't actually educated in nutrition. I don't know if there's like even any. I could be wrong about this, but if there is, it's like very minimal.
I think it's 4 hours out of your whole med school. You do
4 hours of nutrition training, so it's not even a class then.
Yeah. It's what, 4 hours? It's one lecture of a class.
Lecture, yeah. So that just, and like I haven't reviewed the syllabus to become an MD, but I personally know a lot of doctors that have very poor health practice. And like anytime I've went to a doctor, I've never actually had a doctor. You know, we're great at like Western medicine, and that reductionist approach to health is great at acute problems. So I broke my arm. Okay, great. We know how to fix that up, right? We're gonna
medicine is great in the West. Preventative medicine is terrible in the
non-existent, right? They don't ask you about, you know, and again, I'm subject to my own experience here. I've been to a handful of doctors in my life, but they haven't really asked about lifestyle, diet, stuff like that. And the doctors that I do know, like on a personal level, don't have the best health practices themselves. And, you know, like I'll have a conversation with them sometimes, and it's like, how do you not know this? It's like something that I share that it's like, oh, wow, what you said? It's like, what? It's like, you're a doctor, you know, like how is that not something that you're educated on? Like nutrition is so core to health and wellness, yet it's completely ignored in Western medicine.
It's basically all of health can be fixed. You don't need to manufacture drugs. Everything
we have the solutions at our fingertips.
Yeah, like everything's in nature. You just need to know how to use it. And like ultimately, like you don't need medication to lower your blood pressure. You can just like not have high blood pressure in the first place by just eating better your whole life.
Right. And if you have high blood pressure, you don't need, like, okay, let's say you already do have high blood pressure. You can make lifestyle changes to bring it back down. But we try to do everything with a pill that then presents 10 more problems, where now you have a whole cocktail of pills that you got to take every day, literally because you had one issue or maybe two issues and you were taking 2 or 3 pills for it. Now you have all these other issues and you're taking
so pill one,
increasing amount of pills.
Pill one for high blood pressure has a side effect of anxiety. So now you have anxiety. You need another pill for your anxiety, but that one gives you headaches. So now you got to take another pill for your headaches.
That gives you like beta cell problems in your pancreas. So now you got to take those.
And then you got to go get this removed because it's like now you have cancer. Now you're gonna die. What? Like maybe I shouldn't have taken all the pills. Maybe I should have just like ate some spinach, had some whole milk, and ate some kimchi once in a while, and I would have been good.
And of course, like, you know, it's like when you say it like that, it sounds so easy, and it comes down to like, why aren't people making these changes? Which is why, you know, I'm passionate about like psychology, because I think that's like really the root. Beneath the root is like, okay, you know what you have to do to get better, or maybe you don't. Here's what you have to do. But then, you know, like the resources are available for people. Like if you have a Wi-Fi connection and any device that you can access Google on, of course, there's like a influx of information that overwhelms people. But, you know, there's good resources out there that will tell you some action steps to take that will better your situation. But it's like, why aren't you taking them? And there's underlying issues there, which is where, you know, that concern the psychological aspects of an individual, which is where it's so important to come away from this like reductionist approach, which is important. Like it has its place. Like I don't think we should be getting all pills off the shelves. Like, you know, if you're getting surgery for something and you can't be put under or whatever, they need to give you some morphine because it's excruciating pain. Sure, I don't, you know, I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to anybody making any of their own choices, but, you know, I just personally wouldn't make some myself. But going away from this reductionist methodology so frequently and kind of incorporating it back into a holistic perspective is so important. And that makes me, I forget how it tied to this, but I had a connection that I was thinking of before. I was tied in with intent. But you were talking about some
psychology.
Pardon?
Psychology about it. Like if people don't like the whole, like, so my goal as a coach, like I'm trying to create buy-in so that they now have intent in the exercises and they're not going through the movements.
Right.
If people create intent as a practitioner in terms of like I'm a medical doctor, I'm going to make sure that I show them that this works and I'm not just saying it. And then I'm also going to have to be able
Find
to
some other ways. Yeah. I mean, like you're not a medical doctor, you're a strength and conditioning coach, and you know how to implement intent effectively to get people to exercise. You gave us examples before. So,
Yes.
you know, if you don't have ways to engineer intent in individuals on like a psychological perspective, like
There's a book called Drive, and it was written by 2 Harvard profs. It's about human nature ultimately and the 4 drives we have. And one of them is like drive for just accumulating like stuff, so like money. And then you have a drive to basically win. So succeed, win. If I tell an entrepreneur who's like striving to make their business better, you sleeping 9 hours a day is going to make you make more money, they're going to do that. Because they're going to be like, if I don't sleep 9 hours a day, I'm missing out on the money. So,
well, first they have to believe you, right? They have to have like some causal reason for
they're going to be like bought in. Like I'm going to have to develop a relationship with them, communication.
You have to create that intent.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to like foster that so that they listen to me. But the problem with medical doctors and how you said that a lot of them don't tell nutrition advice is because if they give someone a pill, it's easier to say, oh, you're just a non-responder. But if I tell someone to do a lifestyle action and it doesn't work, they're not going to want to try a different lifestyle action. And it's like, it's kind of unfortunate because like, no, we need to like maybe just dive deeper. Maybe that's not the issue. And it's almost like people just want the easy answer. Like, tell me what to do and I'll do it, but I won't do certain things.
Tell me what to do and I'll do it, unless what I have to do is like self-exploration, unless it involves like more effort on my part.
Yeah, right. Like do it for me type thing. Like they go to the doctor and say, heal me. But like, no. You have to heal yourself. The doctor guides you.
Yes.
Right? People only pray when they need something.
It's interesting that this is considered like a bit of a fringe idea that like the doctor they can't like heal you on the fundamental level of your ailments. They can only really, like if you're being prescribed drugs, a lot of the times they can only mask the symptoms or heal the symptoms, but the fundamental issue is still there. And even this idea that, you know, we have things going on psychologically that manifest somatically in the body, that's not like a widely accepted idea. Like most people would tell you like, what do you mean my problem, my bodily issue with my liver or whatever is related to the relationships I have in my life, and you're fucking crazy. Like that's most people's take on that.
Yep.
And it's interesting, but like when you actually dig your hands into the academic science itself, science will back that up, right? Like there's stress that will affect us on the level of the physical body. So what is that? That's your psychological state affecting your physical state. It's the exact same thing.
People don't want to look for stuff that contradicts their opinions. So they want to.
Scary, right?
Yeah, so like they want to deny like, hey, my relationship might actually be the cause of like my stress, not like this physical thing that happened, or
Yeah.
like so little things like that. And then you see it like in medicine too. Like if I put an x-ray and say there's something wrong with this, find it, someone's going to look for something wrong.
Mm.
Right? If I tell you to look for something that's wrong, you're going to look for something wrong.
Right.
But if I just say, look at this, and it's like an MRI, and I don't mention that there's something wrong, you might miss it because you're not looking for the wrong thing. You're not looking for an issue, right? So there's almost like people gotta be open, and this is where like having an open mind, and when you do self-exploration, you kind of get this and you become a better listener and less of a talker, and you kind of are open to more opinions and actually think about what people are saying to you, as well as critically think about the situations going on around you. So like, why is no one questioning the news when they were saying stay inside, never go outside, wear a mask when you're near other people? Why is no one questioning that? Why did no one say, wait a minute, I need to go get sunlight because that's how my body makes vitamin D, and vitamin D helps my immune system. And this is a virus. My immune system fights viruses.
Yeah.
So if I follow this chain, my immune system should be able to fight a virus when I go get sunlight. But they want me to stay inside and not breathe in fresh air. Like, that's the question. So that's just like, it seems simple because people take simple things and overcomplicate them. I tell my athletes this all the time. Whatever sport you're playing, it's a very simple sport. Don't make it complicated.
There's an objective. There's ways to accomplish that objective.
And yeah, and if you're savagely good at simple things, you're now a master at it, it's hard to mess up and not get to your objective.
Yeah, that's really like it really is crazy how much getting to the level of mastery at the simple things, like how far that gets you in any walk of life.
So your mom, she got to a level of mastery where she can commit to running every single day.
Right.
Now she needs to get,
now whether that's the best choice or not without
there you go.
training is a different story. But
honestly, that's a positive habit. She's using her energy and she's doing exercise. Like, that's a positive habit. Some exercise is better than no exercises at all. Yeah, there's ailments, but that just, you need guidance. That's it. That's why other people are in different areas learning about stuff and how do we prevent or not get those injuries, right?
Right.
So, but then she needs to have an open mind. She needs to now be open to advice. Like, oh, you don't run. What do you know? Well, I train runners, so I know how to fix shin splints. Yeah. Or, right, so stuff like that, because I fix shin splints. So it's stuff like that, little things.
We run into like a little contradiction here, and he who never contradicts himself, or they who never contradict themselves are not taking nearly a complex enough look at the world and at their own position, or they're not taking a nearly complex enough position in itself. I forget who said that. Some famous philosopher said that, but
science is purely proving yourself wrong.
Yeah, trial and error. And that's why I want to draw back to the fact that, like we were talking about practitioners before, and we were saying it's hard to learn from, like, we need more practitioners and less theorizers that we're learning from. Like, the best people to learn from are practitioners themselves. So to your remark, like, what do you know? You're not a runner. From what we were saying before, that's like, okay, yeah, that has some ground, right? So we get to like,
but now,
interesting territory there. Pardon?
I'm not a runner, but I've treated shin splints.
But then the question comes is like, okay, you're not a healthy person. You're not a healthy person, but you train or you teach healthy people, right? That doesn't inherently make you like qualified. Yeah, I'm not questioning your credibility, by the way.
I know. But when someone says this, then you go, did you make them healthy? Are you taking credit for their health?
yeah, like what I hear.
Or were they healthy when they came to you?
And you taught the healthy people. Yeah.
I fixed the shin splints. I taught the shin splints how to go away.
You gave the person guidance on how to fix their shin
So
splints.
if a medical doctor says, I made this person healthy and they're not healthy, like the doctor isn't healthy, then you dive into how they made that person healthy. Was it pharmaceuticals or was it actual lifestyle changes?
Right. And to this point, it's like you maybe don't run every day, but you still run. Like when you run, like when you do a sport, when you play basketball, you're sprinting.
I sprint every day probably.
Exactly. So it's still like, it's not like you're not running. Like the thing is, it's like I myself don't have shin splints though. So in that regard, I am a practitioner of like.
I'm better than you because I don't have shin splints.
It's preventative. Yeah. So like it's still like advice or guidance or criticism, whatever word you want to use, from above.
Yeah.
And not above like as like I'm better than you, but you from an experiential level.
Yeah.
Or a knowledge base level.
And that goes back to like our academia conversation. Like, why aren't these profs able to share their experiences? Why wasn't there more courses of like, honestly, you're not going to need any of this, but here's what you're going to need because I've experienced this. My friends in the industry have experienced this.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Why isn't there more of that? And I think there isn't more of that because those people have been in academia only. So they've never expanded.
A lot of people haven't been
done, right? So that's another thing. Like, if people want to be a well-rounded human being, you got to be able to like experience more than one thing.
I agree. Yeah, being well-rounded.
You got to go do stuff. Like I personally, I don't go like party every day, but I've partied, so I know how someone feels the day after.
Yeah, because you've been there.
I know how that person feels when they're hungover.
Yeah.
If I was never drunk before, then I probably don't know, and I'll probably like yell at that person saying, "Why the hell are you hungover? You shouldn't be hungover." But then I'm like,
okay, it's a bit of a good time to get drunk every now and then. So like, you can sympathize with the person, whatever. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you can sympathize. That's the thing. You can sympathize with people, and there you go.
Relate to them on an experiential level, which is important for authentic like connection and anything.
Yeah. And if you never get out of your bubble, like you're not going to be able to relate to people that are outside of your bubble.
So important to expose yourself to like more experience for that reason. Yeah, like that's one of my biggest criticisms of academia too, especially in certain fields, especially kinesiology. You're teaching people exercise science, but you've never been out of the lab or out of academia. You've never been, in the gym.
Doesn't work.
How much integrity can you speak? With how much integrity can you teach if you don't actually know what you're teaching to be true
Valid.
in and of itself, other than like what you've read from a book? Maybe there's also research that backs it up. So granted, it's like, yeah, we have scientific methodology, but
it's in a lab.
It's you got a little bit of white coat syndrome going on there, right?
Yeah. So here's a perfect example with athletes. So a trap bar, like a hexagon bar, this is a more exercise, like you step into it, you pick it up, trap bar deadlift. Shoulders are in neutral. People tend to lift more doing that because it's less complex. So it's simple, stand up with weight. I don't need to give you too many cues. High school strength coach in the States posted on Twitter. She tweeted, she's like, I don't trap bar deadlift. I barbell, like straight barbell deadlift with all my athletes. Getting ripped into by every strength coach that she had on Twitter. Then she puts another post. The only reason I don't trap bar deadlift is because we don't have any. We only have straight barbells. So we can't trap bar deadlift because I don't have any in the facility. So there's your whole, like, it's not one way.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to adapt. Everyone's going to adapt. So if they say in the studies, like, oh, this works, this is the only way, it's like, is it practical? Can that actually be applied to your population or to yourself or to the people you work with or to whatever you are doing? So sometimes, so that's where the whole, like, if I walked up to a prof and said, how can I apply this? And they just tell me what came out of the book and be like, I can't apply it that way. I have 25 hockey players in the gym for an hour. I don't have enough stuff. He's going to go, and not know what to tell me. And I'm like, so you're useless. Can't tell me. So why should I listen to you if this is the only
thing you don't know if you don't have like the adaptive capacities that come from actually being in the field?
Exactly. So this like knowing
a lot of them did like a few. I remember a few professors kind of like
just saying like some, and like kind of certain things are almost like, no, this is how it is. Like 3x10, do this. That's it.
Oh, rigid. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, you can do 40 reps. Just do 8 sets of 5.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
You don't have to do 4x10. You know.
Yeah. Right. So it's like being adaptable, and that just like it's easy to say in my field because I kind of do that adaptation every day. Like I have people come in every day that I wasn't expecting to have this situation occur, and it
might
does
appear from the plan a little bit, right?
Yeah. So like I write something and I'm like, well, I just guess I'm gonna just throw this in the garbage and erase it off the whiteboard and then write a new one in 5 minutes. Right? Because this kid walked in, he has a cast on his arm all of a sudden. And he didn't decide he didn't want to shoot me a text message.
No, so you gotta adapt for that kid. Come up with something new.
Like being adaptable is probably one of the most important things in life, and I think people aren't exposed to it enough.
Yeah, especially in today's like culture, we're losing the need for that adaptability, so we aren't exposed to it. And then because it's less frequent, we're not exposed to it as much, but it still does happen. You're not going to go through life without any situation where you don't need to adapt. But maybe the first time you face something like that is when you're 26, and it's like, good luck. You're not going to know how to handle it. You can't work well under that kind of pressure.
It's going to cost you a lot more when you're 26 than it did when you were
14. Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing where people kind of need to get off their phone and TikTok and kind of like expand their horizon, like start using your technology and your resources wisely and not against you. Don't make them against you. Don't cause your anxiety because you decided to watch 4 hours of 5-second videos. Like that's a lot of stimulus.
So bad for your brain. On that note, I want to throw out a resource for anybody who's still watched this entire thing. Kudos to you if you have. We're probably like an hour and a half in now. It's a podcast with Z-Dog MD and Daniel Schmachtenberger. If you go look up Z-Dog and Daniel, it's a hard last name to spell, but Schmachtenberger, you'll find it. Great podcast, very informative, high quality dialogue. They go over these topics quite a bit. Z-Dog MD is the YouTube channel, and Daniel was his guest. Daniel's very well informed on these topics and dives into that a lot. So I want to throw that out there for anybody. Worth your 2.5 hours. I had something that I wanted to expand on from what you just said. Oh, the intent that I was talking about before. I want to come back to that with what you said about kids being on TikTok for like 4.5 hours a day. I've fallen into it too, where I'm like on Instagram and I'm like, holy shit, how much time has just went by? Like I just, you do the thumb is just going, and then you're like, oh, that was like, that was 25 minutes. What the hell? Intent in the gym is so important. And like you said, how do you get your athletes to buy in? I think it was the coach from the TCU, Texas Christian University, that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And you were talking about how he'll get them to buy in with kind of priming their. Oh, okay. So it was somebody else you were talking about then when you were talking about how in the warm up they're priming their focus to buy into the workout. So they're getting their brain.
Yeah, no. In terms of buying, it's like, how am I going to make these guys listen to me? He uses results. So he used like radar guns. He'll be like, see, you threw faster, which means that what we're doing is making you better. Or you ran faster. See, what we're doing is making you better type stuff.
Yeah, that's the buying thing with the results. Yeah. You mentioned something else where you were talking about how a goalie, when they're throwing a ball up against the wall, they're not really like expanding their capacity for hand-eye coordination. They're just like, warming up their nervous system a little bit, but above all, they're getting dialed in. They're focusing, right?
Yeah.
And that's so important for weight training too. And it's something that you talked to me about off the podcast on like a few weeks ago. We were talking about this of intent being so important for like just your lifts in general, like every single rep, like having intent for every rep to be the same in your exercise and just like being dialed in, being focused. And you see so many people like in a public gym where they're literally like on the machines doing some leg raises and they're on their phone, like texting, and they're not even like, it's in the name of the gym that you work at, M to M, right? Mind to muscle.
Yeah, muscle.
You got to harness in on that intent. And
So,
it's going to make your exercises so much better. It's going to help you be like a more mindful person to stretch your.
we talked about like a light power and how I showed like the med ball wall.
Yeah.
If I don't hear the med balls almost blowing up the wall, I know they're not throwing hard enough. So I say throw the ball harder.
Yeah, because you can. Like I know you can.
So they make it look like they throw it harder. Still don't hear the ball hit any harder.
Yeah.
So I go try to break the ball. They're not going to break the ball, but guess what? They're going to throw it a lot harder trying to break the ball. So that's driving intent. If I give someone numbers when they're jumping, we have something called a G flight. So it's this thing. And basically I put it on the floor and then they jump and they land in between the laser. It tells me how high they jump based on how long they're off the ground.
Right.
So they see a number. Jim gets 22 inches. Josh comes in, gets 26. Do you think Jim's going to jump higher his next jump?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, probably, because he wants to compete and beat his teammate.
So
that's intent. I drove intent. But if I just said jump, they're probably not going to jump 22 or 25 inches, right? So the goal is to basically get them to put their all into it, actually do a max effort. Great lifts that you can do that actually drive intent. Any Olympic lifts. Olympic lifts are very complicated, so I would say start slow.
Learn how to do them, get some professional help.
Yeah, like get a coach, or if you're gonna try to do it on your own, do the regressions of it. So like a power clean, for example, from the floor. If you do not do a power clean intentfully, you are missing the lift. You will not lift the bar and land it on your shoulders. Yeah. And stand with it. You will miss because of how fast it is. Because it won't look good if it's light. So if it's really, really light, you're not gonna be able to do the movement because you're not gonna be able to let that bar float.
Right.
Like you're not gonna be able to do it properly.
Right.
So I'm saying if you want to do it properly, you need to have intent, because you'll literally miss if you don't have intent. Now you can basically half-ass a squat. I can put 135 on the bar and make it look like I just squatted 400 pounds by just not moving with intent, and make it feel harder.
Slow, yeah.
Right. I just move slow. I don't explode up. I don't push the ground away hard. But if I put a max weight on there, I'm gonna have to move with intent, or else that thing's crushing me.
And you know what? Unfortunately, I think that's a thing that they'll have like, like sub-maximal weight, like max for a working set of like 6 or 8 reps. I think that 8 reps is probably what most people 8 to 12 are lifting in a gym. I think a lot of people are putting on weight that they can only do maybe like 12 reps with, and they're going for 10, and they don't have the best intent. Just a testament to the fact that people have very like short attention spans, which is actually a result of that's like what I was talking about in that podcast. You can go watch it and I'll get into it more, but I'll just summarize it briefly about like the phones and the social media and how everything is going to like shorts. We have like YouTube shorts now. We have TikTok. So we're just getting short form, everything, quick little stimulus, and then you're switching on to the next one. We're actually down regulating our capacity for a larger attention span, and that stretches out to all areas of life, including in the gym. So people might not be able to focus on 10 whole reps, as crazy as that sounds. If you actually, like, if you're watching this and you're like, people could focus on 10 whole reps. There's a little exercise that I read about in the book called the possible psychology of man's evolution, I believe is the title. It's a bit of a mouthful, by a Russian author named Peter Upensky, written in the early 1900s. And he was talking about the topic of self-awareness, talking about how people think they're self-aware and that they have, they're relatively present, But if you even just put a timer on for 60 seconds and try just to focus on one sentence, like I am, insert your name here. And you'll find, like in most people's cases, you'll find that like your attention will stray and you won't even be able to focus on your name for 60 seconds. And that is becoming worse and worse in terms of most people can't even do it for 30 seconds now because of the effects of technology. And like I said, it really it affects you in all walks of life. If you're not able to maintain intent for 10 reps and it's heavy enough that you can only actually lift it 10 or 12 times, probably going to see some injuries coming pretty soon.
You're probably not actually going to get to a weight that you can only lift 10 times. You'll probably be at such a sub-max weight that you think that's a 90% effort, but it's actually like a 60% effort just because you didn't move with intent. When someone goes for a 1 repetition max, if they don't move with full intent, it's not a rep. They're not going to pick it up. They're not going to do it, right? You need to give it your all. So, and if you think about being present now, when you're thinking about being present, sometimes it's not a matter of thinking about the exercise. Let's say it's an exercise, but just like, because sometimes people overthink of exercises and then it looks sloppy because they're just thinking too much. They're just not doing, right? So it's about just, again, simplifying.
Feel yourself in your body.
For example, a squat. If you need to think about bracing your core, just think about bracing your core. And then when you're at the bottom of the squat, don't think about, I got to unbend my knee and my hip and push my big toe and pinky toe. Just go push the floor away and get up.
Try to simplify it as much as possible.
Yeah, simplify it. So
don't let your knees buckle, but push the floor away.
Yeah, so you have one thing to think about and that it just happens, right? So, and then the whole attention span thing. I train athletes from age 9 to 14 very often. When they walk in the gym, we do something called a 1x20. They do 1 set, 20 reps. I get to watch at least 12 of those reps if there's multiple kids in the group. And they got 20 squats in instead of 10. In terms of like, if they do like a 3x5, they get 15 squats, but how many were good quality ones?
Yeah.
When I have 20 reps going on, they're going to be doing it for like 30, 40 seconds. I can coach while they're doing it. I can see them making adjustments when it doesn't feel too good. I can see them making adjustments when they feel like, oh my God, I'm getting tired, or I'm leaning forward too much and coach said chest up. I got to bring my chest up, but I have 10 more reps. So that means I have chest up for 10 more reps, not 3 reps because I say it every set when they do 3x10. So 1x20 helps me coach so they get that adjustment right away, right? So there's an aspect where if you want to practice something, you got to get reps and you got to do a lot of it, right? So it's okay to hit those 12 reps and it's okay to be at sub-max loads. But if you want to actually get results from those loads, you can't go through it like half-assed. You got to focus on the stuff that you need to drive adaptations. Or so if I need to work on my ankle mobility, I got to make sure my knees come forward when I squat and I'm not just pushing my butt back.
Right. You got to know what you're weak at and work on that.
Yeah, so that's where intent comes through. And then another way to train with intent is velocity-based training. So there's technology out there, and ultimately velocity-based training is intent-based training. If you try to move something as fast as possible and it's light, it'll move very quickly. If you try to move something as fast as possible and it's heavy, it probably won't move that quick, but it'll move
as quick as you can make it.
As quick as you can make it move. Exactly. So that's what velocity-based training is. And that's why you ultimately don't need technology. Move everything as quick as possible. And if it moves really, really fast, make it heavier. If your goal is strength,
right.
If your goal is speed, and if your goal is power, for example, a trap bar jump, So if you had like our dumbbell jump, if you barely get off the ground and you don't move fast coming off the floor, then you have to make it lighter, right? So you can move faster because your goal is power, speed, and force combined, right? So that's where people can use intent to guide their training, and that's going to maximize their results in whatever field they want. And again, we want people to touch on all these components of fitness, because you lose power within a week of training.
Not training.
Speed, you lose within a week. So like max speed, like sprinting. Power, I think, is 2 weeks actually. So that's more like throwing, jumping.
Yeah.
Strength's going to be like a month, maybe 3 weeks. Some like in between 3 weeks and a month. And then endurance is going to be a month plus. Like you can hold on to endurance for like 2 months.
And size is also sometimes the last thing to go too, right?
Yeah, hypertrophy will go, but that's also, hypertrophy is really dependent on like the other aspects like nutrition and stuff. So like strength and hypertrophy can kind of fall into that same 3 weeks. Right. And obviously, like if I do a bunch of bicep curls right now, my biceps are going to be looking huge, but in 3 hours, they're not going to be looking the same.
Yeah.
Just like the blood flow pump, right?
And everything you're talking about too is like grounded in building people that can move better, not just look bigger and look better, but also like actually move functionally and move better and feel better.
There's a saying called movement over maxes. We don't care how much you lift. We want you to move good. If you can move good, then you can lift more.
Yeah.
I said that to like, I had a soccer team earlier, under 21 soccer team, and they want to add load to their squats, but your depth is not the same every rep. So let's lower that weight, hit depth every time. Next week, go up.
Yeah.
As long as you're hitting depth, go up.
Move well. Worry
right?
about load.
Move well, then worry about load, because if you don't move well, you're not going to get strong by adding weight. You're going to just strengthen dysfunction.
And you're going to strengthen like an egotistical picture you have of yourself that's like, oh, I can lift X amount on the back squats. But like,
and everyone's goal should, like, exercise should be a part of your life for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Not for right now.
Always. So you train for longevity too, right? Like that's so important.
Yeah. Like obviously
loading up the bar, blowing out your knees.
Yeah, I'm not gonna max out my deadlift when I'm 77, but yeah, I can go max out my deadlift in my 20s, and then slowly I just gotta keep deadlifting. But I know that I'm not gonna be getting 500-pound deadlifts when I'm 40 or 50 and have 3 kids and have more priorities above lifting weights. But that's just the way it is, and that's the way life is. But that's where the balance comes in, like you kind of accepting it. It's not that you got weaker, it's that you transition into a different phase. Now your goals changed.
Yeah, different priorities.
Adapt to those, right?
So important to like consciously reorient that. A lot of people get stuck in the past and aren't able to really like shift according to what, and like, who am I to say this, but according to what even they themselves feel deep down is in their best interest. They're not able to like reorient, which is the power of self-reflection. One of the most obvious but underused, I'll call it a technology, just our ability to self-reflect in and of itself is like unique to a human. So I'll call that a technology that we've developed. Most obvious and underutilized one. All right, I think we're pushing like 2 hours here. So that was is there anything else that you wanted to add to, did you want to like plug your?
On a lot in terms of communication and training. If someone has questions on training, they can always shoot me an email at Isaiah@mindtomuscle.ca, and then
ISAIAH
@mindtomuscle.ca.
Mind to muscle.
No, mind to like TO.
Oh, okay.
Put it in like the.
I'll throw his email in the description there, so you can reach out to him if you have any questions or if you want any services from Isaiah. You got some Instagram accounts you want to plug, or
put a Coach Isaiah Moreira. We can put that one in there too.
I'll throw that in the description too. All right.
I put a lot of stuff in terms of like quick tips as well as just very blunt comments. Like you should lift heavy occasionally.
Some good little reminders, and also a lot of value in the form of like practical stuff that you can take a look at on his page. I can attest to that. I follow him, and I see stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. I'll give that a try in my training. So definitely go check him out on Instagram, and I'll put his Instagram and his email down below. All right, I think that's it for today. Thanks a lot for doing this again, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time and for all the value that you offered. And yeah, I'll see you. Maybe we'll do this again, and if not, I'll see you. We'll hang out sometime soon.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Of course, man. Take care.